Good morning, good morning. This is Lesley Sullivan with the lovely podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. Welcome to this podcast. I'm delighted that you are here. This is the 7th episode or the 7th podcast for this series, and this is going to be a good one. I really like this because now we are really diving into specific labor unions within the United States of America. And this is really good to know, just in general knowledge, because it lets you know what has been going on specifically within towns and cities and also rural areas in regards to what the citizens wanted to do and what they felt they needed to do to make things better, not only for their jobs, but for their families and for the community. So this is really good knowledge right here. So the first union that we're going to take a look at is the National Education Association. It is known as NEA. So I'm just going to read off from some websites here. This one is particularly from Wikipedia, and I've read through it, and it reads pretty true. If ever I come across something that's not correct, I will let you know, and I'll circle back to it and let you know, hey, I found something that does not match up with that, but just from looking at this and going through it, it looks like it's on up and up, so I'm just going to go with this one. So here we go. It says the NEA, the National Education Association, is the largest labor union and the largest white-collar representative in the United States. It represents public school teachers and other support personnel, faculty and staffers at colleges and universities, retired educators, and college students preparing to become teachers. The NEA has just under 3 million members and is headquartered in Washington, D.C. The NEA had a budget of more than $341 million for the 2012 to 2013 fiscal year. And it says Becky Pringle is the NEA's current president. It says, as per the NEA website, our mission is to advocate for education professionals and to unite our members and the nation to fulfill the promise of public education, to prepare every student to succeed in a diverse and interdependent world. Now, personally, I don't know what interdependent means. I've never heard that word before. But it must be important because they've got it in their phrase. So I'll look that up later and see what exactly do they mean by that, because I think it's important to research what someone's mission is. And if I don't know what a word means or if it doesn't make sense to me, I look it up, and it's not that it's bad. It's just I want to know what they stand for, and also just learning new words is another good thing. So it goes on to say the NEA originally on the conservative side of U.S. politics by the 1970s emerged as a factor in modern American liberalism. While the NEA has a stated position of nonpartisan, it almost exclusively supports the Democratic Party. Conservatives, libertarians, and parents' rights groups have criticized the NEA's progressive positions. State affiliates of the NEA regularly lobby state legislators for funding, seek to influence education policy, and file legal actions. At the national level, the NEA lobbies the United States Congress and federal agencies and is active in the nominating process for Democratic candidates. From 1989 through the 2014 election cycle, the NEA spent over $92 million on political campaign contributions, 97% of which went to Democrats. The NEA has a membership of just under 2.3 million people, with membership levels dropping every year since 2010. The NEA is incorporated as a professional association in a few states and as a trade union in most. The group holds a congressional charter under Title 36 of the United States Code. It is not a member of the AFL-CIO, but is part of Education International, the global federation of teachers' unions. NEA members set the union's policies through the Representative Assembly, also known as the RA. The RA, which is a delegation comprising elected representatives from each local and state affiliate, coalitions of student members and retired members, and other segments of the united education profession, is the primary legislative and policy-making body of the NEA. As of 2020, the executive officers of the NEA are Rebecca Pringle, Princess Moss, Noelle, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but it's Candelaria, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and I apologize for mispronouncing that. Next one is Kim Anderson. These posts are elected by the Representative Assembly. The Board of Directors and Executive Committee are responsible for the general policies and interests of the NEA. The Board of Directors consists of one director from each state affiliate, plus an additional director for every 20,000 active members in the state, 6 directors for the retired members, and 3 directors for the student members. The board also includes at-large representatives of ethnic minorities, administrators, classroom teachers in higher education, and active members employed in educational support positions. The NEA was founded in Philadelphia in 1857 as the National Teachers Association, also known as NTA. Zalman Richards was elected the NTA's first president and presided over the organization's first annual meeting in 1858. I didn't realize it went back that far. That is really good, because that means they took initiative even way back then about stuff, so that is a good thing to see. The NTA became the National Education Association, NEA, in 1870 when it merged with the American Normal School Association, the National Association of School Superintendents, and the Central College Association. The union was chartered by Congress in 1906. NEA officially merged with the American Teachers Association, the historically black Teachers Association founded as the National Association of Teachers in Colored Schools in 1966. In 1998, a tentative merger agreement was reached between NEA and American Federation of Teachers, also known as AFT negotiators, but ratification failed soundly in the NEA's Representative Assembly meeting in New Orleans in early July 1998. However, 5 NEA state affiliates have merged with their AFT counterparts. Mergers occurred in Florida, the Florida Education Association formed in 2000, Minnesota Education. It says here education, they kind of flip the words. So, Education Minnesota formed in 1998. Montana, known as MEA MFT, formed in 2000. New York is New York State United Teachers, formed in 2006. And North Dakota United formed in 2013. See, these are things I was not aware of that were created or merged. So I'm learning something about this union as well. This is really neat. And it says here, before the 1960s, only a small portion of public school teachers were unionized. That began to change in 1959 when Wisconsin became the first state to pass a collective bargaining law for public employees. Over the next 20 years, most other states adopted similar laws. The NEA reported a membership of 766,000 in 1961. In the 1960s, the NEA's demographics were changing. This was due to the merger with ATA and the decision to become a true labor union, among other factors. In 1967, the NEA elected its first Hispanic president. I'm not sure how to pronounce this person's name, but it looks like Braulio Alonso, and I apologize for mispronouncing that name. In 1968, NEA elected its first black president, Elizabeth Duncan Kuntz. In 2006, the NEA and the AFL-CIO also announced that for the first time, standalone NEA locals, as well as those that had merged with the AFT, would be allowed to join state and local labor federations affiliated with AFL and CIO, or it's one representation. My apologies. It's AFL-CIO. In 2007, at the 150th anniversary of its founding, NEA membership had grown to 3.2 million. However, by July 2012, USA Today reported that NEA had lost nearly 0.3% of their members each year since 2010. That tells me that their members either are not happy with what their union is doing or they don't know what their union is doing. So both those issues are problems. Because the way you keep numbers is to do the opposite of those two things. Know your union, be aware of what it is, and also really get involved in things. But that doesn't mean be a crazy liberal nutbag. It means to practice, what we talked about before, practicing your due diligence, but knowledge is power, and do it in a good, kind manner, right? So that's always good. Because you don't want to look like a bad, crazy union. That just totally destroys what you can and should do in your life. And I'm going to mute my phone. I apologize for not putting Do Not Disturb on. So we will continue this lovely podcast. Okay. So it says here, following the Supreme Court's 2018 Janus versus AFS-CME case, which ended the compulsion of non-union public employees to pay agency fees, or what are known as fair share fees, the NEA's total membership and agency fee payers dropped from a little over 3 million to a little under 3 million. So it's not that big of a drop. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what they're saying because I think it's stupid to make it seem like it's extreme when it's not. But it was a total loss of 98,908 dues payers. That's not a big loss. I think the way it's worded makes it seem worse than it really is. Because when you've got an organization, if only that many people drop, that's not bad. Because you still have a majority. So that actually is not bad numbers for me. You know, just from looking at from an accounting point of view, I wouldn't be worried about that at all. Because sometimes when people leave, it's because they didn't really want to be there to begin with. So you just kind of have to let people go and move on. And you know, for every one person that leaves, try and recruit 3 or 4 more to replace that. So that's how I would have handled that. So then it goes on to say, for the most part of the 20th century, the NEA represented the public school administration in small towns and rural areas. The state organizations played a major role in policy formation for the NEA. After 1957, the NEA reoriented itself to primarily represent the teachers in those districts rather than just the administrators. Amen. I love that. And here's why. I don't like that word administrator. Remember what I said earlier in a previous podcast, that whenever you see the word administrator, there's a reason why that typically has a negative connotation. It's because of things like this, where it's like the administrator only has the say. The administrators only get the good pay. Not so here. They changed it. God bless them. That's a great thing to do. I love to see that. It came to resemble the rival American Federation of Teachers, known as AFT, which was a labor union for teachers in larger cities. The success of the AFT in raising wages through strike activity encouraged the NEA to undertake similar activities. In the 1970s, more militant politics came to characterize the NEA. I'm not a fan of that. That's wrong. It created the NEA Political Action Committee to engage in local election campaigns, and it began endorsing political candidates who support its policy goals. Now, I'm not a fan of that. I think that when you have an organization, you should focus on your organization, not on politics. Like, you shouldn't be endorsing one candidate over another, because then I think it discourages your members of your union to vote for who they want. I think that's a conflict of interest. That's my personal opinion, because that's what I've seen with unions in the past. And I just think if you really want to put the workers' rights first, you put their rights first, not your campaign. That's the thing. Because when you put the workers' rights first, then you already know what you're going to be campaigning for, and you're not going to be pressuring people. Because that's one thing with unions. They are known for bullying their members into supporting certain policies and certain people. It's like, you either do what we want or you're not in our union. And that stuff does take place. Different unions can deny it all they want. I'm not saying this union particularly did that, but that's just kind of sometimes the general behavior of aggressive unions that get too political or get political at all. Like, I don't think politics has any place in a union. That's not what unions were created for. They were created for the workers. They were not created to try and manipulate government offices, which is technically a form of fraud, but they don't like to say that, but technically it is. So then it goes on to say, state NEA branches became less important as the national and local levels began direct and unmediated relationships. The NEA's elected leadership often supported teachers in opposition to school administrators. Wow! I bet that ruffled some feathers in the chicken house. That's for sure. Okay, so according to NEA's Department of Labor records since 2005, when membership classifications were first reported, the majority of the union's membership are active professional members, having fallen only slightly from 74% to the current 71%. The second largest category have been active education support professional members with about 15%. The third largest category are retired members, which have grown from 8% to 10%, and I would expect that to grow more with more and more baby boomers getting older and retiring. Two other categories, active life and student members, have both remained with around 2%, falling slightly. These categories are eligible to vote in the Union, though the Union lists some comparatively marginal categories which are not eligible to vote, such as staff, substitute, and reserve members, each with less than 1% of the Union's membership. NEA contracts also cover some non-members, known as agency fee payers, which since 2006 have numbered comparatively about 3% of the size of the Union's membership. As of 2014, these categories account for about 2.1 million active professionals, 457,000 active education support professionals, 300,000 retirees, which that's going to go up, 52,000 students. I'm surprised there's not more students getting more involved in this, because it's the students that really should have more of a say. Because the thing I'm thinking of is that sometimes, like teachers, they may not have the title administrator, but sometimes they try to act like an administrator. And a student's education belongs to the student. It doesn't belong to the administrator. That's the thing. So I think students should have more rights in this union and be more active in it. Then you have 42,000 active life members and just under 9,000 others, plus about 90,000 non-members paying agency fees. Most NEA funding comes from dues paid by its members. $295 million in dues from a $341 million total budget in 2005. Typically, local chapters negotiate a contract with automatic deduction of dues from members' paychecks. Part of the dues remain with the local affiliate, the district association. A portion goes to the state association, and a portion is given to the national association. The NEA returned 39% of dues money back to the state affiliates in 2012 to 2013. Federal law prohibits unions from using dues or other assets to contribute to or otherwise assist federal candidates or political parties. I have to laugh about that. In accordance with their tax-exempt status, the NEA Fund for Children and Public Education is a special fund for voluntary contributions from NEA members, which can legally be used to assist candidates and political parties. Critics have repeatedly questioned the NEA's actual compliance with such laws. That's exactly what I was thinking. And a number of legal actions focusing on the union's use of money in union personnel and partisan contexts have ensued. I am not surprised to read that. The next section says, National Read Across America Day is an NEA initiative to encourage reading. It has expanded into a year-long program with special celebrations in March as National Reading Month. Read Across America Day began in 1998 on March 2nd, which was the birthday of the popular children's author Dr. Seuss. Oh, that's cool. The NEA partnered with Dr. Seuss Enterprises on the venture from 1997 to 2018 when the contract ended. Okay, so this next section is a list of policies and positions. So it says here the NEA has taken positions on policy issues including, number one, Cardinal Principles of Secondary Education, a report by the NEA in 1918. They emphasize the education of students in terms of health, a command of fundamental processes, worthy home membership, vocation, citizenship, worthy use of leisure, and ethical character. They emphasized life adjustment and reflected the social efficiency model of progressive education. Okay. Number two, the preliminary report on the tenure of teachers appeared in 1920, cautiously recommending school boards adopt a policy of tenure. Okay, number three, from 1923 to 1928, Hunter's Committee of 100 on the problem of tenure stressed the advantages of tenure for society. In 1925, it argued that tenure protects the great body of good teachers from political attack and from dismissal for petty personal and political reasons, but also argued that administrators should maintain control over dismissal decisions. That's interesting. Okay, number four, reforming the No Child Left Behind Act to reduce the focus on standardized testing. I agree with that. And here's why. The No Child Left Behind Act was a complete joke and a complete failure in the state of Oklahoma. It wreaked havoc in our state. I hated it. It was horrible. It put so much stress on our teachers and our schools. And here's the thing. Not every student is going to score well on these tests. And if you're like me, back when I was in the third grade, I scored really bad on the CRT, the criterion reference test, we hated those tests with a passion as kids. We hated them, and so did the teachers. And we didn't get that hate from the teachers. Like, it wasn't because of what they were saying we hated. We just hated these tests because these tests were completely unrealistic about what you learned and what you could comprehend and what you could retain just to go to the next grade. And what sucks is not every student is going to make the best grades on those. So what was happening was they were holding kids back for I don't know how many years. It was terrible. And it's not always a reflection of the teacher. You know, I went to a public school in grade school that was very poor, unfortunately, and we got a lot of the kids that no other schools wanted, and I didn't know this until I graduated from high school, and I realized I got told basically what happened back in those days when I was in grade school, and it was really sad. Like, we had several elementary schools in my hometown. We knew which one was the best and the most popular. It was the nicest school. Just when you walk in, it just smelled awesome. Like, it just smelled like Chanel or something, you know. But I got put at a kind of trashy school because it got redistricted or something, like lines, I don't know what, but had to go to this other school. And, the kids were great, but we had a lot of poverty at our school, and we had kids that were being abused by their parents. They were foster kids, and, you also had kids that were starving or that they didn't know if they were always going to get a bath that night. We had migrant workers. We had this one girl, I remember her, I don't remember her name, but I remember her, she always showed up to school really dirty, like she was just gross. I mean, she was a nice kid, but she was just really gross. It's like she never brushed her teeth, nothing. Well, her family worked, they were called carnies. They worked the fair, and they moved a lot, so she wasn't getting really good food. She wasn't getting a really good home life and all this stuff. Well, do you really think that someone that has a really bad home life is going to score great on a criterion reference test, and are they going to get the support and love that they need from their family? No, they're not. So that testing got worse and intensified with that stupid No Child Left Behind Act. It does not reflect what every child needs, because like for the state in Oklahoma, yes, we have like two major cities, Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Those are our two major cities, but we also have towns, rural areas, and not everybody is super educated. That doesn't mean we're dumb. It's just that some schools really are still out in the sticks because not very many people live out there, but they still need education. And the education needs to reflect what they live, what they can do, and maybe what they want to do. Like, I'm not saying that everybody that lives in the sticks wants to stay in the sticks, but when it comes to these tests, it is completely unrealistic and completely inappropriate to try and force a higher level of education on people that they didn't start out at the right level, is my point. Like, not everybody started out reading at the same age in Oklahoma. So that No Child Left Behind Act, even though I did well in school, I hate that thing. It was so horrible, but that's all I'm going to say about that because it really bugs me because Oklahoma really suffered because of that. So number 5 is increasing education funding. Number 6 is a minimum of $40,000 a year starting annual salary for all teachers. The next one is mandate high school graduation or equivalency as compulsory for everyone below the age of 21. I agree with that because I think to keep people back from graduating high school is stupid. Because not everybody is going to go to college. Like, some people just want to go to a trade school. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, looking back, I sometimes sometimes wish I had become a plumber because I know some plumbers that make really good money. I could have been making way more money way sooner. Missed my calling on that. Next one says lowering the achievement gap. Next one is reforming Social Security offsets. Next one is discouraging school vouchers and all forms of competition with public schools. I completely disagree with that, and here's why. If you are in an area, for example, where I was raised, if you are districted in an area and you're forced to go to a school that's not performing well and your parents want to take you out of school and go to a different school, they have every right to do that. But if you're just letting the Department of Education and groups like this control where your child goes to school, even though you want a better education for your child, it can get very frustrating very quickly. And I think that's what's going on right now with charter schools and things like that, because public schools, Another thing that you may not be aware of, like I don't have kids, but I hear a lot of parents talk about this. So if you don't have kids, this might be a newsflash for you as well. But the way that public schools get funding is from taxes, right? And the way that it gets allocated to them is per student. So these public school systems, another reason why they don't want any competition whatsoever is because they want that money. It really does come down to greed in some cases. It's really sad. So these public schools, they don't want competition, and they want the money from the taxes. And the charter schools and other schools as well, they're like, hey, if the kid's not going to that school, we're supposed to get that funding to help support our schools. Well, here's the thing. Without competition, your society becomes stagnant, and you don't realize what you need to improve. It'd be like if all we ever had was Walmart. If that's the only supermarket we ever had in the United States, well, guess what? That's all we would ever know. And I guarantee you, if all we had was Walmart, and I'm not dissing Walmart, I'm just picking a name. If all we had was Walmart, there would be no competition, and their prices would not be low. The reason why we have really great prices in supermarkets in the United States is because we have competition. We have Walmart, we have Costco, we have Target, we have Homeland, Albertsons. I don't even know if they're still around, but like we have a grocery store in my hometown that it was originally Albertsons, and then it went to Williams, and then it went to Homeland. So I don't know if it's just a buyout or a merger. I don't know. Maybe I could research that. I have no idea. But my point is this. Without competition, it's the consumer and the citizens that suffer the most. And see, here's the thing. Like, I remember when COVID hit, some prices of groceries went up really bad. Really bad. And even with competition, prices went up. But just imagine if those prices were permanent, those high prices on meat, milk, bread, whatever the case may be. Just imagine if that was permanent and if it just continuously went up. That's what would happen if you don't, and that's what does happen, I should say. That is a guarantee. That does happen when you don't have competition. So I think our public schools should have competition. I think they should be improved. But I think they should have competition, because if something's not going right, they need to fix it. And if a parent doesn't like a particular school that's closest to their house, they should be able to take their kid wherever they want, even if it's an hour away. It's the parent that decides what's best for their child. See, it's things like this where it says, discouraging school vouchers and all forms of competition with public schools. That's that sense of entitlement. That's that entitlement mentality that affects administrators, my lovely favorite word, and it affects bureaucrats. That's just how they are. They think that they're above everybody else and that you should just do what they say. And that is sometimes how the Department of Education acts. They treat parents like they're stupid, and they act like they don't have a right to raise their child in the way that they see fit. And that also goes into conjunction with this federal daycare program. Like, that's why I'm always cautious whenever the federal government wants to do something, because I like to see what's the immediate effect and what's the long-term effect of this, and how is it affecting citizenship? How is it affecting our citizens? Because that's where you really see it come to fruition. You really see the pros and the cons with this. That phrase, not wanting competition basically with public schools, that reminds me of the federal government trying to implement forced daycare at a federal level. Like, that is not the American way. That's not democratic. That's another thing. Let's say we're not even talking about the United States. If you have a government that is trying to force the citizens to do a certain type of program like this, that's just bad democracy. It just is. It's not right in any way whatsoever, because it's technically violating someone else's rights. There's a phrase or a saying that, your rights end where my nose begins. Meaning, we're supposed to be equal. We're supposed to have equality. Well, if you have a union or a government having that kind of thinking, where they think that they're at the top and everybody else is at the bottom and they don't want competition of any kind, that's basically like the school bully taking your lunch money and making it so that they get to eat, but you may not get to eat, or if you do get to eat, you only get to eat peanuts, basically, because you don't have a lot of money. Unions are important and our government is important, but it's the citizens that determines this stuff. Like, you need to be careful who you put in power to have power, if that makes sense. Like, just be cautious with that. Next one is reforming laws governing charter schools. That's interesting. They want to help with that. It says in 2020, the union, along with the American Federation of Teachers, issued a report expressing opposition to active... What? This is weird. Okay, so this kind of takes me back. Okay, so it says in 2020, the union, along with the American Federation of Teachers, issued a report expressing opposition to active shooter drills being held in schools, calling on the drills to be revised or eliminated. You know, I don't know what to think about that. I kind of have some opposition to it. Here's the thing. School shootings, like I think it's Columbine was the big one that affected, like really startled the United States. School shootings do happen, and when that one particular really bad school shooting occurred, it shocked the planet because no one thought something like that would ever happen in the United States, and not at that kind of level. And it changed schools forever. Like, we don't have a choice on that. It just changed things. So once that school shooting happened, our teachers had to be retrained on safety. And in Oklahoma, there are some teachers, at least at that time, especially if they were male, they almost always had a gun in their desk. It was locked. But, you know, they were not going to put up with someone coming in and shooting the kids, whether it was a fellow student or if it was a teacher or a stranger or, you know, who knows what. That's the responsibility of the teachers to protect the students. It really is. And, you know, there are some states that are anti-gun and all this stuff. Here's the thing. You know, just because you're anti-guns, that doesn't mean your enemy won't have a weapon. And anyone that is threatening your life is an enemy. That's just the facts. That's just black and white, yes and no, just plain Jane, right there in your face. Anyone that is threatening your life is an enemy, especially if they're pointing a gun right at your face. My personal opinion on what I just read about active shooter drills being held in schools, I think they should have them. And the reason why is because our society has changed. And if we don't change to either keep up or to try and eliminate such occurrences of violence, then we have failed as a society to do the right thing and to protect the innocent and to protect our children. You know, even though I don't have children, if I see a child that needs to be protected, I will protect them. Like, that's just what an adult is supposed to do. So when a union thinks like this and wants to revise or even eliminate safety drills, I just have to wonder, who are they trying to protect? Because it's not the students. Like, we do have gun violence, but we can also be proactive about preventing it and knowing what to do in those situations, because after Columbine happened, we started having safety drills. And the first couple of drills we had were scary because, you know, our nerves were still kind of raw from what happened, but we knew it was for our good and for our safety. And it actually was unique and nice to see teachers taking initiative to care about the students, and they guided us through what to do, get away from the windows, you know, get away from the glass in the door. Like, that's another thing. Our doors changed at our schools. We used to have these really cool doors from the 1960s because our high school was super old. It was an awesome building. I loved it. Like, I love retro kind of stuff like that. Like, just because something's old, that doesn't mean you throw it away or that it's obsolete or doesn't work. But unfortunately, with school shootings, it changed everything. So they changed out all the doors in the hallways for classrooms so that there was no window. So it was just a big, solid wood door. Just massive wood door. And initially when you walked in, it looked like a mental institution because the doors got changed. I mean, it just created a very medical looking kind of place. But we knew why that change had been made, and we knew it was for our safety. Because no one wanted to take a chance of someone coming in with a gun and just, murdering people, whether it's a student, a teacher, a visitor, who cares? Murder is murder. Like, you want to avoid that at all costs because it's completely wrong. Number one, it's against God's law. And number two, it's against almost every law in almost every country that is on this planet. Murder is not acceptable. So being that murder is not acceptable, every instance that you have something like this happen, it's the responsibility of the adults in any given society to be proactive in making changes to society to protect themselves, but more importantly, to protect the most vulnerable, to protect the innocent, to protect the weak, to protect the ill. That's the thing. So I'm kind of surprised that they would want to eliminate those drills because, I'll give another example. Like, every time you go on an airplane, the flight stewardess, they always go through that, in the case of emergency, your cushion is a floating device, and then they ask you, if you're in that special row, the exit row, are you physically able, or are you okay to be in this row just in case we have an emergency, that kind of thing. Like, they do that at the beginning of every flight. Every flight. Why? Because it's a safety issue. And I'm sure that when they first started implementing that serious stuff like that, I'm sure initially the citizens were like, they're going to bring this up every time. I don't want to hear this, or this creeps me out. I'm sure initially some people were apprehensive, but I think the majority looked at it as, they value our safety, and they want us to be aware of what's going on and what to do in terms of a crisis, and how to turn a crisis into a success. To survive a crisis is to succeed. To die in a crisis is technically to fail, because you lost your life or someone lost their life. Like, you're having to look at things black and white, yes and no with these, because if you look at it any other way, you're making room for failure. That sounds harsh, but it's the truth. When it comes to safety, safety is basic. It is basic, and it's basic for a reason, and it's because it's important. Because if you fail at safety measures, pretty much nothing else really matters, because you have allowed your safety standards to be subpar, if non-existent. So that's kind of my personal opinion with that, but it's also based on facts. Because I remember when school shootings started happening. I remember when our schools, public schools, had to make changes that affected society, but they were doing it for our good and for our safety. Like, they didn't consult some trade union or teachers union to get permission to care about the students. They just did it. That's the thing. Sometimes you just have to do what you know is right. Period. No takebacks, no ifs, ands, or buts. You just do what's right. Next section is political activities. It says NEA has played a role in politics since its founding, as it has sought to influence state and federal laws that would affect public education. The extent to which the NEA and its state and federal affiliates engage in political activities, especially during election cycles, that's concerning, has been a source of controversy. The organization tracks legislation related to education and the teaching profession and encourages members to get involved in politics. So this is a list of the different things that they've done. So from 1910 to 1915, women play increasing leadership roles in the NEA. That's good. In 1912, it says NEA endorses women's suffrage in the United States. And next one is 1918, the NEA Commission on the Emergency in Education, with George Strayer as chairman, warns that the evidence from the wartime draft shows millions of potential soldiers were illiterate or poorly educated and often in bad health. The NEA study said the cause was very low quality rural schools in the South, badly trained teachers, and something like bad financing. I can't pronounce this word. It called for $100 million of federal aid to remedy the deficiencies, but none was forthcoming. Many states, however, started setting minimal standards for rural schools. In 1923, the NEA starts to promote state pension plans for teachers. By 1950, every state had a pension plan in effect. Awesome. That is good. I love that. 1920s, the main NEA goal during this period was to raise teachers' wages. Awesome. Raise standards and to gain a cabinet-level U.S. Secretary of Education. I'm not a big fan of that because I don't think they should be messing with politics. Success on the cabinet issue came in 1979. I'm not surprised with that considering how liberal the 1970s were. 1930s, the NEA was never on good terms with the New Deal. Oh, I'm surprised by that. Its main goal was for Congress to pass a multi-purpose public finance bill that would supplement local property taxes in funding schools. Ooh, I see some problems with that. Some relief money was used to build schools, but the New Deal avoided channeling any of it through the Office of Education. I agree with that. I agree that they're not supposed to channel money like that. Legislation never succeeded because it would condone segregated schools in the South and because Roosevelt rejected any cross-the-board program. He was smart with that. He believed that federal money should only go to the poorest schools and none to rich states. The New Deal set up its own separate educational program through the Civilian Conservation Corps and other relief agencies. Learned something new about President Roosevelt. Awesome. 1940s. The NEA successfully lobbied Congress for special funding for public schools near military bases. Oh, that's good. In 1944, the NEA lobbied for the GI Bill, a law that provided a range of benefits for returning World War II veterans. That is good. I agree with it. 1958, the NEA helps gain passage of the National Defense Education Act. I don't know what that is, so I will research that. 1964, NEA lobbies to pass the Civil Rights Act. Awesome. Love it. 1965, NEA works with Catholic school leaders to pass the Elementary and Secondary Education Act for federal aid to schools. I'm going to have to look that up because I'm not always a fan of Catholic schools. In 1968, after years of feuding, the AFT suggests a merger with the NEA. The NEA refuses. That would be interesting to look that up and see why they refuse. Another 1968 says NEA lobbies for passage of the Bilingual Education Act with federal funding for Spanish language education in public schools. Okay, that's interesting. So then it says another event in 1968, wave of school strikes outside South, 80% by NEA. Okay, that's interesting. So 1969, 450,000 teachers covered by 1,019 collective bargaining agreements. Oh, awesome. That's good. NEA accounted for 90% of the contracts and 61% of the teachers. Oh, good for contracts. That's good. 1972, New York State Teachers Association quits the NEA and merges with AFT. 1970s, state affiliates become powerful lobbyists. That's a problem. I don't like that. Ooh, you gotta be careful with lobbyists there. Because whatever someone's lobbying for, it technically means they're lobbying against someone else. So that's kind of a problem. You have to look at both sides with this. 1976, 265 NEA delegates attend the Democratic National Convention. NEA endorses Democrat Jimmy Carter, I bet they regret that, for president. He wins and secures a Department of Education in 1979. Jimmy Carter, just in case people from other countries are listening to this, Jimmy Carter was one of the worst presidents the United States has ever had. He was very uneducated, did not have a concept of how to properly use monies. He did not really understand that businesses need to stay in business because their citizens need wages, things like that. Like, I'm not against Democrats holding office, but he was pretty bad. And I know just from a bunch of older people that I've met over the years from different states and different parties that he was pretty bad for the United States. So 1980, 464 NEA delegates attend the Democratic National Convention. 1984, the NEA lobbies for passage of a federal retirement equity law that provides the means to end sex discrimination against women in retirement funds. That is concerning. Not for the way my voice probably sounds, but I was not aware that there was sex discrimination against women in retirement funds. That is sickening. So I am all for them helping to end that. I just don't think they should be influencing lobbies. There's a better way to do that, but I was not aware of women having discrimination in retirement funds because that's really cruel to do that to somebody just because they have ovaries. It just sickens me, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Year 2000 to present, the NEA lobbies for changes to the No Child Left Behind Act. I agree with it. I wish they would just get rid of the act altogether because I don't like it. In 2009, NEA delegates to the Representative Assembly pass a resolution that opposes discriminatory treatment of same-sex couples. I don't know what that's referring to. I don't know if they're talking about parents or people dating that are in high school that are same-sex couples. I mean, I don't understand because if they're supposed to be talking about schools, it needs to be involved in schools. Like, they need to just be focusing on school and education. But if they're branching out to talk about same-sex couples, that it's nothing to do with the Department of Education, I don't think they should be involved in that on any kind of political or platform. I think that's a no-no. I think they need to stick with their mission. I mean, it's one thing if they personally want to end discriminatory treatment of same-sex couples, like, within their community, but if they're using an organization that's actually meant for something else, I don't think it's appropriate to try and branch out into other causes. Even though I do agree discrimination is completely inappropriate and completely wrong. It doesn't matter if someone is a same-sex couple or they're heterosexual or whatever the case may be. Like, discrimination is just wrong, period. My disagreement with what they're doing here is that their organization needs to stick to what their cause is, not try and influence other causes. I think it's a mistake to get off track, big time. So especially when you're a union, that's a mistake, because when a union gets off track, it's neglecting its members. So that's a big problem. And it goes on to say, in recent decades, the NEA has increased its visibility in party politics, which I disagree, endorsing more Democratic Party candidates, I disagree with that, and contributing funds and other assistance to political campaigns. I don't think they should be contributing to any political campaign, even if it was a Republican. They should not be influencing anything political. I think that's wrong. The NEA asserts itself as nonpartisan, but critics point out that the NEA has endorsed and provided support for every Democratic presidential nominee from Jimmy Carter to Barack Obama, and has never endorsed any Republican or third-party candidate for the presidency. They shouldn't be endorsing anyone. That's not the purpose of their union. Based on required filings with the federal government, it is estimated that between 1990 and 2002, 80% of the NEA's substantial political contributions went to Democratic Party candidates, and 95% of contributions went to Democrats in 2012. The NEA maintains that it bases support for candidates primarily on the organization's interpretation of candidate support for public education and educators. I don't believe that. I think that's a lie. I think the Democrats are using unions to promote their political agenda, and unions and politics need to be completely separated. Completely. That's all I'm going to say about that. It just irritates me. The NEA maintains that it bases support for candidates primarily on the organization's interpretation of candidate support for public education educators. Every presidential candidate endorsed by the NEA must be recommended by the NEA's PAC Council, composed of representatives from every state and caucus, and approved by the board of directors by a 58% majority. That tells me right there that this political activist behavior is coming from the top. It's coming from the directors. It's coming from these people in power. And I think those people should be dethroned. I think they should get other people in there. I think they should put students in charge of that. I think they should give them a chance to really steer the union in the right direction, because if you have people in power that are taking over your union and trying to push it towards one party, whether it's Democrat or Republican or Libertarian, whatever, that's a problem. Even if you agree with what the person in power or the powers that be, even if you agree with them, that's not the role of a union. They're forgetting about the workers' rights. They're not putting the workers first. Because think about all those millions of dollars that they're giving to candidates in political campaigns and things like that. That should be used for the members, not for somebody that is running for office. What does it matter if someone's running for office? Like, the union is the union. Focus on your members. I'm just kind of in shock at this. But I think that is probably why, that this just rang a bell in my head, this whole political activist tangent for them is probably why some of their members are leaving. It's not in huge numbers, but it's enough that it's dipping down. That might be the reason. Because if people aren't happy, they leave. Because if they see the money is being misused and not being appropriated correctly, they're not going to put up with it. They're going to leave and go elsewhere. Or switch parties. You never know. You never know on that. So then it says, in October 2015, the NEA endorsed Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential bid. I don't think they should have done that. I don't think they should have endorsed anybody. Nobody. And it said Clinton accepted the endorsement in person. And it says NEA is a member of the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. I don't know what that is, so I'll have to look that up. Next, it says in September 2013, the NEA wrote an open letter to the United States House of Representatives opposing the continuing appropriations resolution 2014, and I have no idea what that is. I have to look it up. It says the NEA urged representatives to vote no because the bill continues the devastating cuts to education set in motion by the sequester and permanently defunds the Affordable Care Act. The organization stated that they may decide to use the vote on this bill in their NEA legislative report card for the 113th Congress. Sorry, I have to laugh. Here's the arrogance and stupidity of this union. And I'd laugh at this because they're actually giving Congress a report card. You've got to be kidding me. The arrogance and the audacity of that. This union is not the government. We, the people, are the government. Whether we're a teacher or a lawyer or an engineer or an actor or a business owner or, a retiree, like, who do they think they are to give a government entity a report card? This is what we think of you. Who cares? Who cares? Like, just the arrogance, like, that tells me right there that they have gotten too powerful and they've gotten too big for their shoes. They are too big for their boots because they're not focusing on the members. They're trying to practice legislation. This NEA, they're trying to act like they're a separate branch of government within the United States government. That is legislatively illegal and wrong. This union is so off track. Now I see why so many parents are pissed. Because they've lost their way. It's sad. Okay, so then we go to the next section. It says, some critics have alleged the NEA puts the interest of teachers ahead of students. I can see why. The NEA has often opposed measures such as merit pay, school vouchers, weakening of teacher tenure, certain curricular changes, the No Child Left Behind Act, and other reforms that make it easier for school districts to use disciplinary action against teachers. In July 2019, the NEA voted down a resolution that would have rededicated itself to the pursuit of increased student learning in every public school in America by putting a renewed emphasis on quality education. With the modern scrutiny placed on teacher misconduct, particularly regarding sexual abuse, the NEA has been criticized for its alleged failure to crack down on abusive teachers. From an Associated Press investigation, former NEA President Peg Weaver commented, students must be protected from sexual predators and abuse, and teachers must be protected from false accusations. He then refused to be interviewed. The Associated Press reported that much of the resistance to report the problem comes from where fellow teachers look away and school administrators make behind-the-scenes deals. Ooh, scandal, scandal, scandal. Okay. Inclusion of the NEA ex-gay caucus at a convention in 2006 sparked controversy. Okay. Some critics believe the NEA promotes a gay rights agenda, especially since the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals 2005 case, Fields versus Palmdale School District. The case originated when some California elementary and school students were administered a school survey containing sexual questions. Parents who had not been told the survey would contain questions of a sexual nature brought the case forward. I agree with that. The parents should have a right to do that. And if I was a parent, I would totally be concerned about that. The court in that case initially ruled that parents' fundamental right to control the upbringing of their children does not extend beyond the threshold of the school door, which upon petition for rehearing was struck and clarified to does not entitle individual parents to enjoin school boards from providing information the boards determine to be appropriate in connection with the performance of their educational functions. Whoa. And that a public school has the right to provide its students with whatever information it wishes to provide, sexual or otherwise. NEA states that it does not encourage schools to teach students to become gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. But the NEA does, let's see, what's the next line? Sorry, my screen is getting blurry on my computer because it's losing power. But the NEA does believe that schools should be safe for all students and advocates that schools should raise awareness of homophobia and intervene when LGBT students are harassed. Now that I agree with. That I do agree with. Homophobia has no place in our society whatsoever. What does it matter if someone's gay? I could care less. I'm straight. I don't agree with homosexuality. I don't agree with same-sex marriage and things of that nature. But just because I disagree, that doesn't give me permission to have any kind of phobia against them whatsoever because they're still a person. I mean, God loves them just as much as He loves me. You know, we're equals in the eyes of God. So I'm not going to practice any type of resentment or harassment or any kind of phobia because it's just stupid. Like, and another thing, it's a total waste of time. It doesn't do anything to make society better. Those kind of phobias, probably all phobias, make society worse. So we're supposed to push forward, not go back. And also, I completely cannot stand harassment of any kind. It doesn't matter if it's towards women, gays, straights. It doesn't matter. It does not matter whatsoever because harassment is just that. It's harassment. It has no place in our society, especially not in schools or the workplace. And then it goes on to say, a leading critic of the NEA from the left is Dr. Rich Gibson, whose articles on the NEA-AFT merger convention outlines a critique of unionism itself. So that's the last line of this article. But a very interesting podcast today about the NEA Association. And I would encourage you that, if you have questions, feel free to email, call, whatever the case may be. Again, you can call in at 405-314-1119. Email address is Lesley2018Sullivan@gmail.com. And that is Lesley 2018 Sullivan, SULLIVAN@gmail.com. And also on my podcast website, there is a contact button that you can submit a question or a message there as well. And this is really interesting with NEA because it's so interesting. Unions, this is a really good example of where a union had a really great beginning. Awesome beginning. Because our country needed this. Our country needed people to come together that know exactly what to do and what they wanted. Knew exactly what to do. My past tense and present tense malfunction there. But it's a great example of where citizens came together to do the right thing. What I don't like is how this union has gotten off course, and it has allowed some pretty radical people and theologies, even if it's not religion, has allowed some doctrines, I guess would be a better word, has allowed some doctrines to infiltrate, control, and manipulate their union, and get involved in other things that's not supposed to be involved in. I mean, it's just, that disappoints me right there because that tells me they're not focusing on their mission. And I'll give an example. Let's say, for example, you're going into battle and your soldiers, they know what they're supposed to do. They've been trained. They've been told where they're supposed to go. They're supposed to take that hill or take that mountain and fight the enemy. Well, if they just decide to focus on something else, then they have failed their mission because they did not take the hill, they did not take the mountain, and they did not pursue the enemy. They did not do what they were supposed to do. It's the same way with this union. They have a mission, but they have steered off course. And it has caused a lot of problems. It's really irritated a lot of people. And it disappoints me when a union doesn't stay on course. And it's kind of like whenever they get crazy nutbag liberal like this, it disappoints me when they do that because their intentions are good and true. I have no doubt that the people that are taking this organization off course, I have no doubt that they have really good intentions about what they want to fight and what they want to do. But when you're part of one organization, you need to focus on that mission because that's where you're going to be the most successful. It's kind of like the lie of multitasking. Like, I can't stand it when I have an employer that just likes to dump all this stuff on me because I'm really good at this task over here, but yet they want to dump all this other stuff on me, but yet not pay me for it. So cheap labor, right? And then they expect me to be able to give the exact same attention and efficiency to all these other tasks that they put on me. And it just doesn't make sense. Because there's only so much you can do in a day. So you want to make what you do be precise and successful. And that you actually accomplish what you say you're going to do. And what really concerns me with this particular union is how they allocate money, how they use the funds. I don't agree with what they're doing. I think those dues should be used directly for the members, not for anything political, nothing whatsoever. I mean, they can make excuses and you'll have a really good argument, and I have no doubt they truly believe in what they believe in. They truly believe in the Democratic Party. It's obvious because they give so much money to that. I have no doubt they truly believe in the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, it does have some good things to it. But, with anything else, there's give and take. There are good and bad things in the Republican Party. But I think that when it comes from the viewpoint and the validity of organization, when it comes to money, you have to be very careful how you're using those monies. Because otherwise, you're leading down the road of fraud. And I think, regardless of whether they give themselves permission or not, and whether or not the government looks away, turns the other cheek on this, or turns a blind eye, just side note, turn the other cheek was not a good reference, because that's not what Christ asks us to do. He doesn't ask us to turn the other cheek when there's bad behavior going on. But it's just concerning to me about what they're doing. So I pray that they get back on course and really focus on great education, not just good education, but great education in the public school system, because I am one of those people that went to public school. There was a big part of me that wanted to go to private school, but that wasn't on the ticket. That wasn't on the ballot for me in terms of my situation, because we all knew that public schools were kind of a step below private schools, because I kid you not, and I'll close with this, I guess, but when I went to college, I could tell who had been to private school and who went to public school, because kids that went to private school, they were way more ahead in terms of education when they got to school, when they got to college. Like their math, their science, their English, their writing, it was far better and ahead of me. I mean, it was like they were sophomores or juniors in college already, like just their skill level, their skill sets. And I just thought, what in the world? It made me think, what the hell, excuse me, Lord, what was I taught in public school that I can tell I'm not as competent as some of these other kids that went to private school? Like, it was disappointing. I was just like, man, did I miss out. I just kind of felt like not prepared. I mean, college is intimidating anyway, but it's just kind of an eye-opening experience when you're sitting next to someone that, probably has the same intelligence as you, but what they were raised in and what they were taught far exceeds what you were raised in and what you were taught. It was kind of disappointing. I was like, wow, public schools at its best. It's just kind of like, it was kind of shocking to me. But, I mean, I didn't let that deter me from going to school and making friends and, wanting the best for other people. It was just kind of an eye-opening experience of, I'm glad I met those people. I'm glad I met those fellow students. And if anything, they were able to help me with schoolwork that, if I didn't know the answer, I could ask them and be like, hey, can you show me how you study for this? And, just show me once and I'll get it down. They're like, yeah, sure, we'll show you. It was just really nice to be sitting next to people that, if they are ahead of you, and if they offer to help you, they can train you way better than a teacher that didn't know what they were talking about in a public school system. That's why I think it's important for more students to get involved in that NEA union, because students sometimes have better ideas than the teacher. That is probably going to hurt some feelings and ruffle some feathers, but I don't care, because what I'm saying is true. It is definitely true. I've lived it. I've breathed it. I have seen this reality in my life, and it takes me aback at times. It does. But point being that I really think this union is a good union. It just needs to get better. It needs to get back on track. I think if they continue to veer off in the direction that they're going, number one, they're going to lose members. Number one, they're going to lose monies. Number three, they're going to look like an idiot with trying to infiltrate and ruin our laws as opposed to making laws better, because, the title of this podcast is The Endurance of Labor Laws. They're not even focusing on labor of the teachers. That was the whole point of their union. Like, just because, we have more advanced technology and we live longer, we have better health, that doesn't mean the endurance of the mission stops. Because there is always something good to do for mankind. And if you're going to focus on labor for teachers, you need to focus on labor for teachers. Like, focusing on all these different causes, it's just distractions. Distractions never get the job done. And distractions are just like stupid multitasking. Guess what? Instead of getting one job done really well and being extremely successful at and doing a great job, guess what? Now you've got all these other things that, you're doing them, you may be completing them, but guess what? It's not your best work because you weren't diligent in it. It's the exact same principle. That exact same principle applies to the private sector as it does the public sector, and it definitely applies to unions. Big time. So, but anyway, I will end this podcast with, speaking a blessing for you. I hope that I pray that, I don't just hope, I pray. It's good to have hope, but when you pray for something, it means it comes to pass. Because God answers prayers every day. Even if you don't believe in God, give it a chance. I look at it this way. You can always be blessed. So I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole. If I can talk slower, happy, healthy, and whole. And I pray that you're wonderfully prosperous and that you are enjoying your life every day and doing what you truly desire. So have a blessed day and a blessed week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.